Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Event SquadCast. And if you caught part number one, you already know we unpacked data enrichment and how it's transforming events. But today, we're going to take it a step further because enrichment alone isn't just the finish line anymore. It's really just the foundation. Today, we want to discuss what comes next, and that's event intelligence. We're going to talk about how data becomes actionable in real time, how conversations can turn instantly into insights, and how understanding behavior can completely change how your teams engage and convert. Once again, we've got the perfect person to guide us through it, Captello's CTO, Nasir Jamal. So let's get into part two, intelligence that goes beyond enrichment. Nasir, how are you doing?
I am doing great, man. It's spring and I'm excited. How are you, sir?
Excellent. Yeah, spring in Texas is, you don't know if it's summer or winter, but it's been good so far.
Tennessee's
Um,
for me in that regard.
so, Nasir, let's just start here. Enrichment, intelligence. A lot of people use those words interchangeably, but they're really not the same thing, are they? What really is the difference between enriched data and true intelligence?
Yeah, that's actually one of the biggest misconceptions I run into. Enrichment, to kind of define it simply here, it's just about the record. It's did we get the right email, the right title, the right company? That's important. So we need that clean foundation, but it's still very static, right? It's a snapshot in time. So intelligence is what happens next. It's about the context, it's about the timing. It's about giving your team the ability to make a decision right now, not tomorrow, not after some analyst pulls a report, but in the moment. So think of it this way, right? Enrichment tells you who someone is, and then intelligence tells you what to do about them.
Okay, so you're drawing a pretty sharp distinction there between the two. So enrichment, we can view that as the foundation, but intelligence is the engine. And we know that you have to build a strong foundation. So enrichment needs to be quality enrichment. And intelligence is the engine that takes us to the next step. So let's talk about things that I've heard you mention before. And we're talking about three pillars of event intelligence. So could you please walk us through the three pillars? Because I think this is where things start to get real for people. And number one being the data enrichment portion of it, the
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah, so really what we're working on is really that shift from static to actionable, right? And that's really where a lot of programs typically fall apart, is we collect amazing data and it just sits there, right? We're saying, no, that data should be working for you, right? The second it hits the system, and that's really how we're trying to approach this. So that takes us into kind of some of the key foundational elements and the three pillars you mentioned. The first one really is around what people know. Data enrichment, that's your foundation. You capture a lead, the system instantly fills in the gaps, contact info, account mapping, etc. You're not just getting a name and a badge scan, we're getting actually usable profile. And that happens automatically, not 3 days when someone manually looks them up in LinkedIn. So at that, that is kind of the point of capture, no delay. And for us, that really encompasses a massive amount of capability just around the enrichment element, and we go much further than many others, including CRM and pulling in account context and so on. Going into kind of the second pillar, right, that's really where conversation intelligence comes in. That's where things get interesting for anyone that's ever really worked a trade show booth. Here's a problem that a lot of people know, but most don't talk about, is your best reps are having these incredible conversations all day long. They hear the pain points, they're hearing the buying signals, they're hearing exactly what the prospect needs. Then what happens? You get back to your hotel, they're exhausted, try to write notes from memory, but 80% of that gold, right, is now gone. So conversation intelligence changes that completely. Your rep now, captures a voice note right there in the moment, we're capturing a conversation even. It could be a 30-second conversation. It could be a quick debrief. It could be multi-minutes, right? The system transcribes it. The AI pulls out the key pain points, all the buying signals, competitor details maybe that were mentioned, and next steps. And then we make that available for the team immediately, not after the event, not after someone consolidates a
But I
spread.
have a question for you, Nasir. Um, let's talk about this just for a second, because whenever you talk about recording conversations, people freak out.
Of
So
course.
it's a compliance thing, especially since our platform is tuned uh, for the enterprise, and security is a huge thing with them. Can we talk just a few minutes about compliance and how do we handle that not only within our software platform, but how do we recommend that reps handle that situation on the show floor?
Yeah, no, definitely a great question, right? So Captello is a global company. We're based around the world. We support shows in almost every region of the planet. So it's important that we are as globally compliant and also regionally compliant. In the United States, every state has varied laws when it comes to that. And obviously, every country is going to have even stricter laws and controls around it. So what we've done is equip everybody with the right set of capabilities so they can ensure that compliance, consent, etc., is maintained. For one, we're not streaming these things to us, so you have to actually make a conscionable choice here to select, trim, and send that over. More importantly, and when it comes to some of the regional requirements, that could be that there needs to be some sort of audible cue that says, "Hey, recording has been started." There
Mhm.
might be a consent that's required in a signature, right? We support that as well. So we've built in a lot of capabilities into here so folks can be compliant. There is consent that's being set up. There's GDPR compliance with the local states and laws here in the United States, Taiwan, et cetera. So we've provided the teams, especially enterprise customers, as you mentioned, all the various capabilities around that control. And that does flow over to organizers as well. The organizers have additional controls where they can enable these features, but depending on where the show is being hosted, there's a lot of controls that are relevant to the locality.
Cool. Well, thank you for explaining that. And I used the conversation recording part of our app at our last event, Exhibitor Live, and it flowed pretty well. I just say, hey, do you mind if I record our conversation to keep notes for us for future reference? And most people are just like, yeah, no problem. I've never had anybody refuse that. So talk about quickly now, back to the conversation intelligence piece of it. Let's talk about how this differentiates your intel versus what you might have if you don't do that process of conversational intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's multifaceted. For one, there is an automation layer to it. If we can capture the conversations and you have that context, then your follow-up can be a lot faster. You can go ahead and automate draft emails that the team just simply reviews based on the conversation we just had and any enrichment efforts we did around it. So that allows you to quickly respond to customer from the very first moment of interaction, and that does change the game. But more importantly, right, is everyone has all been that rep, especially at the show floor or even in sales directly, where you have this massive follow up backlog that you have to actually somehow still remember, still tailor something that is customized for them. At the same time, if you've had hundreds of conversations over that event weekend, then you are essentially in no way going to remember a lot of the details about all this, even if it's a customer that you've known for a while. So it's incredibly critical because follow-up suffers because of this, right? But if you have those insights captured and summarized in real time, your follow-up can happen while the interest is still fresh. That's a massive competitive advantage. And there's tons of research that shows the faster you can go to that follow-up that is contextual and relevant, not just some AI generated, non-relevant template. That is incredibly critical for closing the deal and having success with your prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the part that really kills a lot of us. You've had 15, 20 incredible conversations and they all start to blend together and you're not sure what you said to who. And now you've got a record of it. The sales rep, whether it's you or someone that you assign that prospect to, You have a an audio record that you can go back and essentially be part of that conversation and listen to it again. So, what's the third pillar? Can we move on to the behavioral side of it?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing within conversations, there's a lot of sentiment and there's a lot of context that is incredibly important to also learn from and derive. And that does lead into some of the behavioral intelligence as well. This is kind of the third pillar I want to talk through. This is about watching what people actually do, not just what they tell you, right? That's around booth visits, session attendance, content interactions, demo requests, how long maybe they spent at a specific activation. All these are signals, and when the buyers, when we layer in those signals together, you can see the intent. You can see and identify who's actually in a buying cycle versus who just wanted a free T-shirt, right? And that's a huge for prioritization because your team's time is very much limited, and you need to be focused on the right conversations.
Yeah, okay. So, we've used this at events before, and you're just basically mounting a camera, a small camera in your booth or in multiple different locations. Last time we had one mounted at a coffee station that we sponsored, and we were able to track how many people are walking in the aisle next to that activation and how many people actually stepped in and engaged with it, and what was their sentiment, the look on their face, or how long did they stay in there and have a conversation with something? What were the demographics of the people that did engage with our activations? And then in our booth, where we were able to determine if different areas of our booth were performing up to standard, if we could post show measure those metrics against industry's broader standards and say, well, are we behind the average or are we excelling above? So it was super good insight. Um,
And
and
Brad,
it helps us to identify, again, who's really interested in the solutions that you're offering or the products, and who's potentially more ready to buy than someone else.
absolutely. Yeah. So we're building that intent profile in real time, right? And what you mentioned is one dimension, by having the camera mounted, seeing what's happening within your booth. That's great. But we can also take in data from other sources. So if you have those relationships, if you have third-party data, if you have your own maybe gamification partner, right? That is a big name that wants to also somehow tie what they're doing into your passive gamification, into a leaderboard. Those are all things we can combine together to truly gain that full visibility and share that back with the team.
So now we're mapping interest pretty much at every step, whether it's pre-event marketing or it's activations at the event, lead capture, it's conversations we're having. It's getting exciting now. We're getting lots of data, and I love data. Let's pull back for a second, though. For people like VPs of marketing who might be watching, heads of field marketing, demand gen leaders, why should they care about all these shifts? What's the actual business impact for them?
Yeah. Well, I can give you kind of a list that matters to them, right? First, you identify the right accounts faster. You're not guessing at who's a good fit. That data tells you. Second, the lead routing becomes a lot more instant, right? The right lead goes to the right rep while they're still at the event, not weeks later when the moment's passed. Especially if your rep is there. Like if your rep is there and in the system, we know who that is. I think it's important for somebody to be like, oh, you're currently with this person. Let me go grab them. These are powerful details that I think should be accessible to your team at the fingertips there. And then that leads us third, right, which is personalization. Starts much earlier now. When your rep has, conversation context and behavioral data, for example, especially before the first follow-up call, the outreach is completely different. It's not a generic, hey, thank you for stopping by email. It's specific
Mhm.
and it's timely. And then, on the back end, your scoring, your attributions, right? All of those things actually mean something because you have real signals to feed the model, not, hey, they visited my booth and that's it.
Yeah, and I think attribution is huge right now as we see a shift toward in-person events gaining and gaining in importance, especially as we see kind of a flood of AI generated content hitting us from every direction. In person is more and more critical all the time. And even more important, being able to attribute value to the shows we're attending or exhibiting at. We're spending thousands and thousands of dollars to have a presence there, and we need to report that ROI. We need to say we had so many meetings that led to so much pipeline that are going to lead to so many deals.
Absolutely. It's honestly attribution at the moment is the number one question a lot of teams are getting. As the market shifts, as everybody is asked to justify going for events or which events make the most amount of sense, that becomes a very key piece. And the honest answer is if you're waiting until after the event to assemble your data, you're already behind, right, on the attribution side. The data has to be connected in real time or you kind of lose the thread. Also, what does your historical data look like from previous events, previous successes? So it's critical that we start building this process and this data so we can make predictive analyses and accurate recommendations.
Well, we know that when you go to an event and you see your competitors there, we know that everybody kind of has their own secret sauce and special blend of solutions or platforms they're using to kind of make their event the most successful they can make it. But let's talk about your speed to lead, your speed to follow up, because I think this is where Captello really separates from the pack. How critical is real-time access to this kind of information?
Yeah, it's very much critical here, right? And I don't say that lightly. I think that happens at, really, if we think about what happens at most events today, you capture a lead, the data syncs to your CRM, maybe that night, maybe the next day. In some cases, we've heard 2 weeks later after it's been cleaned up. Then someone has to, clean it, enrich it, route it in addition to that. And by the time the rep actually follows up, it could be a few weeks. So a week, a two, three, what other sales folks, competitors, right, are responding much, much faster than you? And why weeks for you to kind of go to an expensive event to capture this wonderful information, but for it not to be followed up on for a very, very long time? And frankly, if the follow-up process is too difficult and all the information is not accurate and right there, most reps probably will ignore it. It'll never become, enriched. So we feel that's a critical opportunity that's being missed.
Yeah, and we haven't even begun to discuss making the most of meetings pre-event at your event, and then scheduling post-event meetings there at the point of lead capture or at the point of conversation yet. But let's take it back a step. And it's one thing to be able to respond quickly or instantly. It's a whole nother thing to prepare or be better prepared before the events. Can we talk a little bit about intelligence before the event even begins? What does that look like this year?
Yeah, I love this topic because it's very much a missed opportunity for a lot of teams nowadays, right? Knowing who's attending, you might have a list, right? But most companies do nothing with that until they show up at the booth. So what if you can enrich that entire list before the event, right? Identify which attendees are your target account. See which ones match your ICP. Know who's already in your pipeline. Know who's engaged with your content over the last X amount of days, right? Now, with that information, your team can walk into a show floor with that real plan. They know who to prioritize. They've pre-booked meetings, like you mentioned, right? That's an underutilized thing with the right people. If you have that insight, you can proactively reach out and schedule and maybe tune them to sessions that are truly relevant for them. So we really want to move the booth staff from playing defense here, right, into running an offensive game for the most part.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You talk about activations on the show floor and how people have chances to win and they'll come visit your booth as a result. But honestly, sometimes it kind of feels like your booth staff, your sales team is playing an activation and the event is the game. And they're just trying to get these people to jump into their booth and hoping and that they get lucky and connect with the right people. It's like a spin to win in the booth. And are you going to randomly land on that one conversation you're really hoping to land? So you got to be much more intentional than just treating a trade show like a game, pretty much. So when
Yeah.
you put all this together, pre-event intel, event and post-event, like what is the full picture look like? Can you paint that for us?
Yeah. So it kind of looks like this, right? Before the event, you've done your targeting, you've enriched your lists, you've booked your priority meetings. At the event, you're capturing every interaction, right? Conversation intelligence is running, you're booking follow up meetings in real time, your behavioral data is building these intent profiles. Then post event, this is kind of the key. There's not this post event gap that typically exists. Follow up is already happening, should be already happening. Meetings that are booked at the booth are already on the calendar. Sequences have already kind of been triggered that are contextual and relevant. Your pipeline is already being built right before the sales team even gets back to the office. And that's critical. When you've connected that event life cycle, that does change the game quite a bit. It really is a night and day compared to the old model of, hey, let's spend weeks sorting out through the badge scans. And think about the human cost of all of this. There takes tons of people to go through, filter all this out, do the additional research, do the correlation. There's human error that can come into this. So there's a lot we can uplift. It's not just simply AI for the sake of AI or automation for the sake of automation. It's purposeful to assist the teams in order to do what they do best, which is help close these deals.
Yeah, so basically, what we're doing is taking a multi-day or multi-week timeline and compressing it down into a very short time frame. And we all remember the days of handwritten spreadsheets or notes and business cards that you take home a pocket full or even a little box full, and you sort through those, you enter them manually, and then you phone call and hope everybody answers the phone until you finally get to talk to them and request a demo. And all that's being compressed into a very short time frame where now you can literally be on the show floor, and before that person leaves the booth, you got the meeting scheduled or you've had a meeting with them, and you can attribute basic pipeline. You might even know their budget before you even get home. So very exciting. I want to kind of push us forward now and take a look at the future a little bit, if you would. Last question here before we wrap. Where is all this going? What does event intelligence look like 2 or 3 years from now this year?
Yeah. So we really are moving toward predictive intelligence here, right? So right now we're capturing, activating the data in real time. The next phase is the system telling you what's going to happen before it happens, for the most part, right? So which prospects are most likely to convert, which accounts are showing early like intent signals from these multiple events, multiple activations, multiple touch points, etc. And which follow-up approach really has the highest probability of success given the personas, given the social elements and the interactions that are out there that are important for us to base some of this on. So we're also moving towards this cross-event learning, right? Where insights from one event should absolutely inform your strategy about the next one automatically, right? From fully automated follow-up flows that are personalized based on every interaction the prospect has had with your brand. That's very critical. So really for me, the end state looks like this, right? Every single interaction automatically drives the next best action in real time, no human bottleneck. And that next interaction, it does not have to be programmatic, does not have to be thought of ahead of time. We can use some of the powerful intelligence that exists today to help us derive that based on the situation, based on these many metrics and data points that we collect and push through. So this really isn't science fiction, right? It's this foundation that is being built right now. And the companies that really adopt this approach early are going to have this massive advantage over the ones that are still running events the old way.
Yeah, and it's all based on really good quality data and intelligence. So a big vision, a very interesting take on what's coming down the pipeline and how we're, as Captello, kind of leading that front. So that's very exciting. Let's answer one more for me. If there's one thing you want event pros to take away from this conversation this year, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say if you could boil it down, I would stop treating events like a collection exercise. Like you mentioned, where we're kind of playing the game a little bit, right? That era is over. Every year I watch teams pour six figures into a booth, fly out the best people, run incredible activations, and then what? We go home with a spreadsheet and spend 2 weeks figuring out what happened. And by that point, the hottest prospect has already taken 3 meetings with your competitor who followed up the next morning. So really what I want people to take away is this, is the speed wins, context wins, and action wins. The data was never the problem. Event teams are sitting on some of the richest buyer signals in the entire go-to market. So the problem is the gap between the capturing the signal and then doing something with it. And that's where revenue dies, right? It's in that gap.
Yeah. So don't just collect data, use intelligence and get to acting on it immediately, right?
Absolutely.
Well, if part one was about building better data, part two is about turning it into revenue. And thank you, Nasir, very much. And thank you, guests, for joining. For everyone viewing, if you're as intrigued about event intelligence as I am, and knowing that it's really changing the game, make sure you stay connected with us. Learn more about Captello. Follow us on LinkedIn. And check out, we'll be posting updates on the work Nasir and his team is doing to stay ahead of the game. And as always, if you found today's conversation helpful, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We're going to be back to you with more insights to help you elevate your events. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Event SquadCast. Until next time.